National Advisory Eye Council, 6700B Rockledge Drive Conference Center, NEI, NIH. The SBIR STTR Program, Jerome Wujek, Ph.D., Program Director. Slide, NEI Small Business Grant Portfolio, From Application to Commercialization.
So I'm Jerry Wujek.
Research Resources Officer, NEI, Division of Extramural Science Programs.
And I manage, or try to manage, the NEI Small Business Program. And this is a bit different. Actually, it's quite a bit different, I'd say, from most grant mechanisms, because as you can see, it's from application to commercialization. This is a grant mechanism, and I'll tell you a lot much more about it. I could take about a half a day and talk all about it, but Annie only gave me 45 minutes, so I'll try to move through it quickly.
Slide, Small Business Research Program.
And give you basically an overview of what small business does, its process, its successes, how it's been changing over the years. I've been at NEI since 2006. Time flies when you're having fun. Okay, so quick overview, what it is, how it works, evolution of the program since 2006 when I joined, and looking to the future.
Slide, what it is, Small Business Research Program.
So, what it is. Some people have called it America's Seed Fund, and it's one of the largest sources of early stage capital for small businesses. Early stage is very important. We're actually funding companies that venture capitalists and angel capital people will not look at. They say, come back to us when you've got human data or something like that. It supports USA companies. That's one of the eligibility requirements. It's for creating innovative and high-risk, high-payoff technologies, although I will say high payoff in quotes because we are also very interested in niche markets. We actually have a company called Dancing Dots. We gave them one grant, but actually the company is owned and operated by a blind musician, and his product is software for blind musicians to read music as they're playing. And Braille and playing a piccolo at the same time is a little bit challenging, if not impossible. And that's a very small market. But of course, market is a big part of it. It's a commercial promise. We're not looking for, the science and technology is the foundation, but the end point is sales. Or, well, it's more than sales, really. And of course, we're the NIH, the NEI, we're looking to improve health and save lives. So that's why we're very interested in small markets, niche orphan diseases, because one of the 5 review criteria, bringing back CSR into the topic, is significance. And I tell my applicants, it's not necessarily the significance of your problem, it's the significance of your solution to a problem. Okay, small business again, 2 separate programs. One is the Small Business Innovation Research, and as the reviewers at the study sections will say, innovation's part of the title. The other one is smaller, Small Business Technology Transfer, and as the title suggests, it's technology transfer from nonprofit research institutions to small businesses to get it to the marketplace. And that's STTR. So I'll be talking SBIR and STTR.
Slide, what it is, SBIR and STTR programs.
These have been congressionally mandated, so it's the law. Every large federal agency, and this is a program that is federal-wide, from DOD down to the Department of Education. DOD is the 300-pound gorilla in terms of the amount of money they have. HHS, which we are part of, is second. So SBIR was established back in 1982, so there's a long history here. STTR was established in 1992. Congress really wanted to help move things from bench to bedside, as it were. Okay. Also, this is a law which is periodically reauthorized. We're currently reauthorized through fiscal year 2022. Periodically reauthorized. What's that mean? Well, every now and then, the rules change as we play the game. So things do change. It's dynamic. It keeps us interesting. Federal-wide, so it's actually the Small Business Administration that sets the policy. So the rules, regulations, and laws that we have to follow in administrating and doing this program. And the 2 programs, they're separate. Dr. Steinmetz cannot mix the money between the two. NEI has $21 million for SBIR,
3.2% of budget.
and that's for SBIR only. STTR is a smaller program, about $3 million here at the NEI.
0.45% of budget.
So, but we actually get fewer grant applications to STTR, so it's all about the same.
Slide, what it is, SBIR and STTR similarities and differences.
But there are similarities and differences between the two programs. Both of them are about private sector commercialization, getting things to the marketplace, and stimulating technological innovation. And actually, over the last few decades, pharmaceutical industry, a lot, and even the other parts of health industry, where is the innovation coming from? It's actually coming from small businesses. Large pharma, for example, they've got the deep pockets for clinical trials. So the difference is, well, STTR, well, let's start with SBIR. Small business can do the whole works, 100%. STTR, there is a required partnership between a small business and a research institution. Miami University, Harvard University, et cetera, UCLA, University of Washington. So it's a cooperative research that's required and stimulating technology transfer. Although we're very creative here in the small business program, sometimes it's a small business that really has the technology. What they need from the university is equipment, supplies, expertise that they can't provide.
Slide, what it is, small business, SB, eligibility criteria.
Okay, eligibility. Who can apply? Well, of course, it has to be a for-profit USA business. You'd be surprised. Well, isn't for-profit and business the same thing? Well, not always. I do get applicants calling up and say, well, I've got a nonprofit. Can I apply? No. So it has to be small, 500 or fewer employees. Most of the companies are in the range of 2 people to 20 people to 50 people. Many of them are startups. Some didn't exist last year. The R&D work must be done in the USA. So that's another key point. But the marketplace is global. Once you've got your product and R&D we've gotten you there, then you can sell it anywhere, as you'll see in some of the examples I'll provide. And lastly, individual ownership. So this is one of those things where the devil's in the details. So I won't bore you with the details, but that's an important thing. So venture capital companies can't own the small business.
Slide, how it works.
And of course, the goal is commercialization. And there's lots of ways to define commercialization, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But the simplest definition that I found, dictionaries have lots of different definitions, process of making a new product, a new production method, or a new service, telemedicine, for example, available for sale to the public.
Slide, how it works, defining commercial success.
Okay, defining commercial success. Here at NIH, and I'm going to be mixing NIH and NEI a little bit as we go through, because some of the programs, some of the things we do here, they're unique to NEI, but we also have available to our NEI small business program some of the NIH-wide resources, and I take advantage of those. So how do we define commercial success? It seems like, well, sales, that's an obvious thing. And of course, selling your own product. But this can be a long, winding road because a lot of medical products absolutely have to go through the FDA. And that can take a long time. Licensing agreement or partnerships. We have some companies, they make a component, sell it to a manufacturer. You'll never see that company's name on the product, but it's in there making it work better. Merger or acquisition. Before I do this one, I'll step back. Partnerships, strategic partnerships. I tell companies, SBIR, we fund projects, we don't fund companies. Between grants and over this long haul to get to the marketplace, you've got to have the wherewithal to keep yourself going, keep your employees paid, keep the project moving forward. So strategic partnerships, Series A, Series B financing, those are key steps. And that means somebody's put crowbar to their wallet and giving you money because they think your technology is going to work. Merger or acquisition. This is true especially for the pharmaceutical biotech companies because it takes deep pockets, as I mentioned before, to do clinical trials. It can be multi-million dollars, and no small company has that. So if you get bought out, and I'll mention a couple of these examples also, heck, that's for us, that's a commercial success. Again, somebody paid money for that technology. And then the clinical trials. We are funding some small businesses. Depending upon the product, they're able to get to a clinical trial. It can be first in human. Again, venture capital will want to say, well, we'd love to fund it, but show me some human data first. We can help them get there. And just as a quick note, over the years, we've had over 40 companies that have achieved some form of commercial success here at the NEI. So it's doing quite well, I like to think.
Slide, how it works, licensing and sales.
Okay, so how it works, licensing and sales. This is one example. This is a phoropter. Everybody's gone to the eye doctor. Get those big machines, the phoropter. Does this look better? Does this look worse? Does this look better? Does this look worse? Well, Planoptica has developed an automated mobile tool.
For accurate comprehensive refraction, Quick-See handheld auto refract.
And one of their first products is the Quick-See. They came in with a phase 1 grant, and I'll be talking more about phase 1, phase 2 a little bit. But their early grant, they developed a very basic system, licensing agreement with Oralab in India. So the marketplace is global, and they've actually sold their technology or licensed it to the Oralab, and Oralab is selling the EC in India. So very little training, almost even the technicians can do it. So it's very good. But now they're looking to sell it in America, but this is and in Europe. So it's a more sophisticated market. So they're using a phase 2 grant to extend the functionality of the Quick-See. Two of the aspects they're looking for is to enhance their spherical and astigmatic optical power. So not just get the most basic prescription, but actually a very complex, sophisticated prescription, just like that.
Slide, how it works, merger or acquisition.
Okay, another one. This is actually a double example. Bioptogen Incorporated down in Durham, North Carolina. Ocular coherence tomography, the OCT that Aaron was talking about. They got in early in the game, and it's a small business, and OCT, non-invasive, great imaging technique, micron resolution, the examples in the upper right, cross-sectional, they can actually do 3Ds. They've developed and sold in the market their own systems, and several innovative ones, pediatric, which can be challenging because you've got young kids, they're not always cooperative, a handheld OCT in various situations, more portable, intrasurgical OCT. This one was very instrumental in what eventually happened. But it's normally, if you've ever done any surgery, looking through a scope, you see what's on the surface. Surgeons, by experience, know what's underneath the surface, but with the intrasurgical, you can actually see some of the layers as you're operating on the retina. And then extended depth OCT, because now that allows you to almost take the whole eye in one session. So it was a recognized leader in the OCT field. I would run across papers, and I'd look in the materials and methods. They were using OCT. They bought it from Bioptogen. And they're such a good leader, they eventually got purchased by a German company, which actually is a subsidiary of a Japanese company in 2015, like Microsystems. And coming back to Aaron's talk at the very end, data management. Well, the CEO of Bioptogen, he started a new company because he didn't want to work in that sort of environment anymore. He's an entrepreneur. But he's now got a grant application coming in that is doing, artificial intelligence, data management, and all of these things that Aaron was talking about. So the consortium question at the end, we may be able to answer that question for you.
Slide, how it works, clinical trial.
Okay, clinical trial. Perion Sciences,
Durham, North Carolina.
SBIR awarded in 2010. They were looking at developing an epithelial sodium channel blocker for chronic dry eye. Again, this is a company trying to develop a drug. Deep pockets needed to get through clinical trials. They're looking at the sodium channel blockers because dry eye, it's a complex disease, but hydration of the eye surface, very important. They're looking to regulate salt and water transport, improving the hydration of the eye. So with their first grant, they were looking to design, develop, find novel molecules that could specifically and potently inhibit epithelial sodium channels. Drugs are very tricky things because first they got to be efficacious, they got to be potent, but then they have to be safe and many other things that go along with it. But with outside funding as well as our funding, and they also took advantage of another resource that the NIH has available. What was it called back then? But basically it's a resource that companies and investigators can have access to. Basically, we have subcontractors at NIH that do pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, safety, metabolism, et cetera, formulation. This company was able to take advantage of that resource. It was a competitive grant application. That moved them forward. They're doing clinical trials. They just completed it.
Phase 1, Phase 2A, and 53 dry eye patients.
Results are very good. And of course, now pursuing next steps. And probably soon will be bought out, if not a little bit later. Especially if the results come out good. Because that's always, the clinical trial is the ultimate animal model. Until you can show it, there are many drugs which are great all the way to the end. Do that clinical trial. Doesn't work. I actually had one company that we did fund with a clinical trial, but the results didn't work.
Slide, how it works. Grants and resources.
Okay, small business, how it works. Grants and resources. You apply for a small business grant. The NIH peer reviews all the SBIR and STTR grant applications. And there are study sections specifically for the small business. Dr. Hartnett knows all about that. And of course, the 5 NIH review criteria are applied, just like any other grant mechanism. For the company, this is great. Unlike venture capital, it's non-dilutive. We fund the company, but as a federal agency, we can't take an equity position or ownership position in the company. Venture capital, they give you money, they take a piece of your company. So it's unlike private investments. And also you get to keep intellectual property and data rights. So it's a very lucrative, very attractive resource to small businesses. And of course, it's very competitive. Our success rate is running in the 15 to 25% range. But it's getting tougher lately. Because there are a lot of companies. I tell applicants, they ask, is my project available to you? Is it worthwhile? Is it eligible? I say, if it has to do with the eye, NEI SBIR does it. As you'll see.
Slide, how it works. SBIR and STTR 3-phase program.
Okay, a little bit more about how it works. Let's get into some of the nuts and bolts. It's different from the R01 and many other grant mechanisms because it's actually a staged process. First, small business phase 1 grant. This is a feasibility study. It's a small amount.
Up to $252,131 total cost.
Small time, 6 months.
SBIR.
Or 12 months.
STTR.
But it's about feasibility. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Phase 2, that's the full research and development project. That's where you begin to really optimize and get that strong data.
Up to $1,680,879 total costs in 2 years, SBIR and STTR.
And then phase 3, according to Congress, phase 3 is your commercialization stage. That's the use of non-SBIR, STTR funds. I say, we kick you out of the nest, you've got to get it to the marketplace. Critical thing, small business, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, it's not the same as clinical trial phase 1, phase 2. Sometimes that gets awfully confusing to people. Talk phase 1, phase 2, it just rolls off my tongue and people say, oh, a clinical trial. No. It's different. Okay, phase one grant, establishing the technical merit and showing commercial potential. So it's proof of concept. So it's a small grant. You got to ask that. What's that most important question that you need to show, make it a go, no go decision point? Phase two, that's where you really build out the product. If it's a device, optimized designs, prototypes. If it's drugs, pharmacology, efficacy. And in both cases, there can be manufacturing issues. And then phase three, commercialization stage. I put that in quotes because I tell people commercial planning should be from the start. You're always thinking. And that's what I learned when I was at a biotech company. One of the jobs of the CEO was always to keep these wonderful scientists on target. Here's your product. Oh, that's a nice little finding. Write an SBIR, and then we'll think about doing it.
Slide, how it works, commercial success.
So again, commercial success. This is a recent one, and it's ongoing. Lumathera. This is a case of they've got sales outside of the USA, but now they're beginning with some of our funds, FDA-approved clinical trials. So their project is clinical evaluation of photobiomodulation in dry AMD patients. Okay, we all know mitochondrial dysfunction and oxidative stress. They all part of the AMD, especially the dry AMD. The photobiomodulation, it's actually using specific light wavelengths. And in this case, it activates mitochondrial respiratory chain components. So it's non-invasive, using light to treat part of the diseased tissue. It stabilizes metabolic function and stimulates mitochondrial energy. Remember, the eye is a very energy-dependent system. Photoreceptors, all the retinal cells are constantly working. So what they've shown in clinical trials in Canada and in Europe, and now they're beginning clinical trials here, that the photobiomodulation, it causes or leads to regression of drusen, improving retinal function, and for the patient, they get better visual acuity and contrast sensitivity. Of course, it's not a cure. It lasts for about 6 months or so, depends upon the patient, but they found that the patient comes back for a treatment, 2-3 days, about 10 minutes each treatment, and then you get the improvement again. So it is a get better, get worse, come back, get treated, get better, but that's not so unusual to a number of diseases that we are treating already. Valida is the name they've given their device. It's a light delivery system. It's approved in the European Union, the CE mark. For those of you who may not know, the CE mark it's a variation. It's quite different than the FDA, but again, it's a regulatory process by which medical products are approved in Europe. And now they've just initiated FDA-approved clinical trials. So that should be coming to America soon, hopefully, in the next few years.
Slide, how it works, fast track grant.
Another mechanism that we have is a fast track, simultaneous submission and review of phase 1 and phase 2 grants. Why is that necessary? Well, now, this is useful for projects with high commercialization potential. But what it does, normally if you go phase 1, you go through review, get the grant funding, you do the project, submit grant application for phase 2. Now you got to wait 9-10 months to get the money. That reduces the gap between phase 1 and phase 2. So, of course, phase 1 is awarded first, and then you do that project. You submit a progress report, and then it's evaluated and approved. It's an administrative review in-house here at NEI for our grants.
Before phase 2 is awarded.
And so phase 2 is not guaranteed, but many of the companies actually do get it because once they do a phase 1, they're doing strong work. So over the years, we've funded 28 projects.
Since 2006.
4 phase 1s are actually active right now. We've had 2 grants that actually did fail the transition, so it's not a slam dunk. And have we had any commercial successes? We'll come back to Bioptogen. Their intrasurgical OCT machine, that was started and initiated with a fast track. So, and of course, now they've been bought out. They're so successful.
Image. intrasurgical optical coherence tomography machine with image on monitor.
More recent one is Iris Vision LLC, using, again, artificial intelligence, and they've created wearable low vision glasses for the visually impaired.
Image, wearable low vision glasses viewing YouTube.
So it actually, using AI, it modifies the scene, magnifies specific aspects of it, and it can be worn. It's very mobile. It's like the virtual reality that people use a lot now. And then thirdly, and this is not the only ones, but Ribiscan Incorporated, they're in New England, automated screening for strabismus. And that's 3 different views of the device.
Image, top view with touchscreen, front and side views.
It actually is about the size of a basketball. It seems to be quite intriguing for the kids. And what's very unique and powerful about this, it's automated. Because normally you need a little bit of cooperation from your patient to really get a diagnosis of strabismus. This requires no cooperation. So they're actually able to check and screen infants as well as young children. And it's very quick and rapid.
Slide, how it works. Minosis, Cellular Devices Incorporated.
And this is another company. It wasn't Fast Track, but it's another interesting success. It's all about cataracts and cataract surgery. Initially, their project was microtechnology enhanced pediatric lens capsulotomy device. This is one of those small markets again. Pediatric cataracts.
Leading cause of childhood blindness.
Not that frequent, but it can be devastating to be blind at a very young age. Cataract surgery is very common. In some cases, people call it almost simple. But the first step is cutting a circle in the lens capsule. In adults, very simple. It's got, surgeons know, just do a little search. In children, that lens capsule is different physical characteristics. It's a little more difficult to tear, to make that cut. Matter of fact, that's the most challenging part of it. Failure or success can happen based on that.
Image, cataract surgery. Incision, a small incision approximately 3 millimeters in width is made at the corneal margin.
So very quickly, cataract surgery, cloudy lens, incision is the first step, and that circular cut. Many of you already know a lot about this, but making that circular cut is critical. And as you can see, you're working through the cornea. So this is technically challenging. And the goal of Minosis was to create a device that would automate and simplify that first and most difficult step. So in 2011, they got a Small Business Phase 1 grant. So with this, they're able to do early prototype and feasibility. And this is a very complex system that they were creating. So you can see sort of the sketches that they had.
Image A, folded tip at end of device needle.
It comes out folded.
Image B, tip pops out into a disc shape.
They extrude it. The instrument pops out. And in C,
Image C, small purple ring aligned with edges of the tip.
you can see that purple ring. That's the working piece right there. Very thin, microengineering, a zap of electricity, generates a lot of heat, makes a perfect circular cut in that capsule. And the other tricky thing is, once it's opened and done its business, D is sort of a structural schematic. You got to go back to A and pull it back in again, so you can pull it out of the cornea.
Image D is service structural schematic.
So, with 2011, Small Business Phase 2, they optimized design, components, and surgical performance.
Slide, how it works. Minosis, fast track. Image, semi-transparent scan of the 4 stages of the tip expansion.
And there you can see it being unfolded and then go DCBA, it has to be unfolded again. And then also there's a bit of suction because they grabs right onto the capsule so they get that perfect cut. So they developed the Septo Precision Cataract Surgery System. With the Phase 2, they did microengineering, bench testing, in vivo surgical with animals, performance testing, and then the regulatory pathway. And now this is the system that they are selling.
Image, Zepto Precision Cataract Surgery System.
Ironically, the way things turned out, cataract surgeons, when they got wind of it, they loved it so much, they wanted it for all of their surgeries. And actually right now it's being sold for adult surgeries, and they're still working on the pediatric, getting that through the pathway. So, and if I remember, I'll come back to it, because there's another mechanism that's available now that wasn't available then. Well, they actually got onto it before it went away and then came back again.
Slide, Innovation.
Okay, but we're also interested in innovation. So cataract surgery seems pretty straightforward, so commonplace. Is there an alternative? Well, we know that what cataracts are, lens crystalline proteins, they sort of become aggregates and insoluble, and they block light passing through. And it's been estimated that if we could delay cataract formation by 10 years, we could reduce vision care expenses by 50%. Also, it'd be great if you could, stop the progression or, actually reverse them. So there's actually two companies. First one, Viewpoint Therapeutics, and there's been some good academic research showing that you can, reverse some of these or stop the process in vivo in animal models. So they're developing a topical treatment for cataract. They're designing and synthesizing small molecule chaperones to destabilize that amyloid. And then right now they're in the process screening, selecting compounds in a cataract mouse model. So they're going forward with that. Plex Pharmaceuticals, here we got some competition. This is the marketplace. So small molecule activators, they're coming at it with different molecules, but they're trying to also have small molecule activators with chaperone activity to, again, try to reduce and stop the progression, maybe even reverse it. And although it seems cataract surgeries are quite commonplace in America, but in underdeveloped countries, access to that sort of surgery is not uniform or available often. So the third world actually may be a good market for this.
Slide, Evolution of the Program.
And now I'd like to talk a little bit how the program has evolved over the years. Basically, when I started, it was give them a grant and hope for the best.
2006.
Phase 1, Phase 2, and the fast track were the primary tools we had. But certainly I've learned over the years, and I think NIH as a whole, commercialization is a process.
Without a clear finish line.
And I've given you a little bit of indication. You're moving along step by step. Maybe you start selling outside America, then you FDA-approved trials, you come in, and there's very many different ways of doing it. There's a variety of paths to the marketplace. Is it a device or a drug? Is it a service or a product? Again, your pathway may be different. How quick you can get there. Regulatory approval, that can be critical. And it varies. FDA has one way of doing it. European Union has another way of doing it. And other countries, Mexico, for example, has their own way of doing it. And I bring in Mexico because I'll mention that later. But there are also the business challenges. Many of these are startup companies, great scientists who have started these, but there's the business side. There's the business of science, not just the science of science. Reimbursement. You make a product, but who's going to pay for it? Is it the patient? Is it the clinician? Is it the health insurance company? Is it CMS, Medicare? Or is it a combination of all three? If it's telemedicine, is anybody going to pay for it? Let me go back. Oop. Yeah, so now it's 2020. We've got phase 1, phase 2 fast tracks, and we have the phase 2 competing renewal.
SBIR only.
Many times they're very complex projects. $1 million doesn't go as far as it used to. So a second grant can help you get through, especially if you need federal regulatory approval, or it's a very complex engineering, or it's both. And then direct to phase 2.
SBIR only, bypass phase 1.
Over the years, many companies have come to me and said, well, I've got feasibility, the proof of concept done. Why do I need a phase 1? And I'd have to say, it's the law. But now Congress, in one of its reauthorizations, has given us the direct to phase 2. So if you've really got that proof of concept in hand, you can go direct to the phase 2. And now also we have the commercialization readiness pilot program. There are a lot of details I haven't told you about, but one detail is we don't fund virtual companies. For a phase 2 grant, minimum of 50% of the work needs to be done by the small business. But if you get to the point where you're ready to start a clinical trial, you need good manufacturing practices, good clinical practices, safety, toxicology, that sort of work. Most small businesses don't have the expertise or the facilities to do it. They need to go to a contract research organization. One of the big things about the CRP, you can subcontract out almost all the work, get that expertise. And also allows you to do other things that regular SBIR grants won't allow you to. Market research, for example, patent work. And, that reminds me, Minosys, go back to the Zepto cataract. Their last step was they won a CRP, and they used that to get themselves ready for the clinical trials. And they did the clinical trials that got them the FDA approval in America and around the world. They've got CE Mark too.
Slide, evolution of the program. CRP leading the clinical trial. Image, eye with detached retina.
Okay, so another example of the CRP, ONL Therapeutics, and this is a drug company. They got their phase 1 grant in 2012 developing a small peptide,
ONL1204,
fast-mediated retinal cell death.
in eye disease.
This would inhibit that. And their first target, retinal detachment. You get a retinal detachment. Of course, you're not getting that in the hospital or in a clinic. You get the symptoms, call the eye doctor, doc, I can't see this. We got to get you in and get the reattachment surgery done. But there's going to be this time gap. So the idea here is provide a drug that will delay that cell death until the surgical reattachment can happen. 2014, phase 2 grant, IND enabling. Investigational new drug application. So I've already talked a little bit about this. Now I'm giving it a name. Those pharmacology and safety tests that you need to do on a drug. Dosing, maximum tolerated dose. There's a whole list of things that need to be done. IND enabling. Before you even go to the FDA, say, I'd like to get approval to do a clinical trial in America. So they won a commercialization readiness program in 2017, did some more work, and now they're in initial phase 1 safety trials for treatment of retinal detachment. So it's not a commercial success yet in one sense, no sales, but they've taken a big step, and they've got a big pharmaceutical company very interested to the point where they made an investment, and they've got one of their people on the board of ONL.
Slide, evolution of the program.
And then more evolution, technical and business assistance. I've already alluded to the business of science. So we now have available programs and resources to assist the grantees in better technical decisions. Again, there are lots of technical decisions you need to make before you go to the FDA. There was one company that we had funded. They did all their work with a tagged protein, GFP, attached to the molecule as they did all their experiments. They go to the FDA, say, here's all the data we've got. FDA says, well, what about that fluorescent tag you've got? Is that going to be part of the product? No. Well, go back and do it all over again and then come back to us when you've got that clean data. So that's why I said earlier, you're always thinking commercialization, okay, minimizing technical risks, and the key thing, the commercialization of new products and processes. All of these things cost money. You talk differently to financial investors than you do to scientists and to regulatory agencies. So again, back in the early days,
2006.
niche assessment program that gave market research to companies that had a phase 1 commercialization assistance program that gave some assistance to teaching people how to do the business if they didn't know how to do that. But now, in addition to that, we've got for
2020.
This is for phase 1 grantees, ICOR, Intensive and Entrepreneurial Immersion Course. Basically what this says, the mantra is get out of the lab, go find your customers, ask them what they want, and who are the customers. And part of the one of the benchmarks for this program is they have to interview 100 potential customers. And for a scientist to get out of the lab and go talk to people and say, what would you do? What would it take for you to buy my product? Is this what you really need? You know, if you make it, they will come. Wrong. Commercialization Accelerator Program, that's the Commercialization Assistance Program on steroids, because now we've added, now there are 3 separate tracks. One is the basic one, commercialization, learn how to talk to investors. It's your pitch, your 1-minute elevator talk. The advanced track, there are companies, small businesses, they've got that business expertise, but they're now innovative, got a new product, a new field. They really don't know this. They've been doing drugs. Now they got drug delivery. Oh, that's a new area. Got to talk to new people. So they've got a particular problem they need solved. And then lastly, the regulatory track, which that gives them the assistance in there, know how to talk to the regulatory path. We also have available entrepreneurs in residence. I myself am a trained scientist. Most of the program officers are trained scientists. I may be a little bit unusual. I worked for a biotech company for 8 years. But we have now entrepreneurs at the NIH, and I'll talk about the seed office in a moment. These are people who've done this. They've started their own companies. They've been venture capitalists. They know here's what you need, how to get to the marketplace. So that's the resource that's available to our small companies, NIH-wide. And then lastly, investor meetings. We all go to ARVO, but the investors are going to meetings too. They're talking among themselves. How best do I pick the winners? Well, through NIH, we're now giving assistance to some of our companies to go to BIO, ACA, Angel Capital Association. It's an association of angel investors, et cetera, et cetera. Stanley Morgan, they have their meetings. Our scientists, our companies now get a chance to get in front of these people and say, here's what we want to create. Here's what we're creating.
Slide. Commercialization is a process.
And another commercialization is a process, Vision Quest Biomedical.
2008 SB Fast Track Grant.
They're creating the iStar, and this is one of the diabetic artificial intelligence algorithm systems for vision screening. So it's a computer-based screening for diabetic retinopathy. The problem, poor compliance with annual vision screening. So the goal of this company was to develop rapid, affordable, semi-automated vision screening. Ideally, they'll, as I'll mention in a moment, but an important thing was now evaluate large number of diabetics to prevent vision.
Image, iStar Vision Screening System.
So basically, go in, get a picture of what fundus camera, get non-dilated imaging. So you don't have to dilate the pupil. The image goes up to the cloud. The iStar algorithm is there. 2 minutes, you get the results. The patient hasn't even left the chair or the office. And what it's doing, and this is an algorithm that's not trying to just say, you've got this disease. It's really dissecting out, distinguishing, you're normal, you're fine, come back in a year. Oh, you've got a problem. You need to see an ophthalmologist right away. Okay. And so, and for ophthalmologists, the way the system works, they make their best profit on treating patients who have health problems. The 75% of the patients that have good eyes, they're not making that big of a margin there. So the 25% are the ones the eye care specialist wants to see. It streamlines, makes it a whole lot more efficient, et cetera, et cetera. So again, artificial intelligence. So with the small business fast track, phase 1, did the feasibility, the AI algorithm on a large data set. This is all retrospective. They were able to optimize and validate the algorithm so they could distinguish abnormal from normal. Then they went into phase 2, and there they improved the AI algorithms, but they also got some other grants. They were using us, and they used us wisely, because automatic image quality assessment, that was a key thing. That's one of their strongest selling points. And they've got several companies interested in putting that into their cameras, regardless of diabetic retinopathy screening. Plus, on top of that, they were ambitious. They wanted to develop their own handheld retinal camera. And then they got a phase 2B, the competing renewal, more work. It's a complex system they're developing. It's not only algorithm, it's getting into a clinical network. So they began their clinical studies prospectively. And then are the business challenges, the reimbursement. This is where the Affordable Care Act came into play, because that set metrics for the health insurance companies. Health insurance companies were very interested in them, and they had deals because now they had to get all of their people, all of their patients, all of their clients screened for vision, and how to do that. This is the way to do it. So they're very interested. Clinician acceptance. Workflow is very rapid in clinical setting. You got to see people, some of you know that better than I do, on a rapid basis, it seems. And then, of course, the federal regulatory requirements. That took a good deal of work. Always the back and forth negotiating what's the best aspects of the clinical trial. Now they are currently commercializing in Mexico. Mexico has their own quote-unquote FDA. They found people that they could work with. It's a long story. I haven't got time to go into it all because I think I'm running over. And now they're working on a CE mark and soon to begin an FDA clinical trial. Aaron had mentioned that a company already had FDA approval. Okay, but that's an example of build it and they will come. It's one thing to get FDA approval. Now you've got to get that clinical acceptance. CPT code, some of you know exactly what that is. Some of you may not. But that's how the health insurance company pays for things. If there's not a CPT code for that, nobody's going to pay.
Slide. Looking to the future.
So that's the key thing. And I'll finish up real quick looking to the future. I think things have been going very well, but monitoring commercialization progress, that's a tricky thing. All of NIH is working on that, developing a company tracking database, because the commercialization happens as a process in steps and long after we've given them the last grant. I'm going to be working now with some of the NEI program analysts to try to pull together this data. It's quite a bit of different data. It's not all in the IMPACT-2 database that we have at NIH. Then a key step is funding decisions, because we get a lot of strong applications, try to make better strategic funding decisions, and that's where a tracking database can come in handy. Working with other ICs, learning from the other small business program officers, and vice versa. And of course, one thing I'd like to do is enhance the small business webpage. And lastly, small business education and entrepreneurial development. That's the Office of Director of NIH. Each NIH institute sort of manages their own small business. And so this office, their job is like herding cats. But each institute has a different community, different ways of doing things, different sizes. So they oversee the general program, but they are now providing us with small business opportunities and resources. That's where the entrepreneur in residence are located. And they give outreach to angel investors, venture capitalists,
Tech transfer organizations and state economic development agencies.
et cetera, et cetera. So they're doing a lot more now, evolving how we can help move companies from that first phase one feasibility proof of concept out to commercialization, getting these innovative, strong things out to people and help patients of all ages. So, an entrepreneurial training.
To extramural community and NIH program staff.
So, thank you for your attention. Sorry if I ran long. Any questions?
Logo for NIH, National Eye Institute. www.nei.nih.gov